Y 35 na legislature in Guam is called to order. Talawani Sijuas to all my colleagues here this afternoon. For the prayer this afternoon, will Senator Pito Terlahi kindly lead us in Chamorro Put Favor. Please stand.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Dear Lord and our God Almighty, we ask for your forgiveness. Please forgive our sins and the things that we all failed to do as you wish. We repent, my dear Lord, and we ask that you guide our footsteps, heal our bodies, mend broken hearts, and care to the needy and protect us and our loved ones. Please protect your people from danger and seen and unseen. Thank you for your many blessings and for keeping us covered under the blood of your Son's name, Jesus. In his precious name, amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen.
Si Diyos maasi, Senator Pito, for the recognition of recipient of Miladsan Mastakilu na sacrificial, will Senator Regine Bisco Lee kindly lead us? You are recognized.
Buenos and Hafa Madam Speaker and colleagues, and a happy belated Veterans Day to all of you. On behalf of a grateful island and country, we honor Mess Attendant, Second Class Non-Petty Officer Francisco R. Muffness, World War II, and the family of Mess Attendant, Second Class Non-Petty Officer Francisco R. Muffness for making the ultimate sacrifice in service and defense of our island and our country. Si Diyos maasi.
Si Diyos maasi, Senator Bisco Lee. For the recitation of Ina Fresi, will Legislative Secretary Shelton kindly lead us?
Ina Fresi, Ginini Mastakulu, Gihinasoku, Imas Takulu, Gikorasonhu, Zani Masfigu, Nanina Senyahu, Hua Fresin Maisatu, Parabai Protehi, Zanu Defendi, I Hanenki, I Kotura, I Lenguahi, I Airi, I Hanam Zanitana Tomorrow, Near and Shaku, Duretu Girinazuas Tata, Esti Hua Fitma, Gihilo I Biblia, Zendi Bedarahu, I Benderen Guahan.
Si Diyos maasi, Legislative Secretary. And for the singing of the Guam hymn in Chamorro and the singing of the national anthem, will our minority, our men, our colleagues, our minority, please lead us.
Kantai matunan gitodu ilugai. Parai ora, parai gloria, abibais la para. Parai honra, parai gloria, abibais la para. Todo i tempo i pas parahita, tangin langit na bendition. Contrai peligro na fansa fuham, Zeus proteis languam. Contrai peligro na fansa fuham, Zeus proteis languam. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous Star-Spangled Banner yet wave, o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Si Diyos Masi, colleagues, please be seated. And at this time, Madam Clerk, Haji Mangaya, Gwitney Putfabot, roll call.
Senator Castro. Senator Lee. Senator Marsh Titano. Senator Moylan. Senator Munya. Speaker Munya Barnes.
Buenas, Gagiatzu.
Vice Speaker Nelson. Senator Perez. Senator Ragel. Senator San Augustine. Senator Shelton. Senator Taitagui. Senator Pito Terlahi. Senator Therese Terlahi. Senator Torres. Madam Speaker, there is a quorum.
Si Diyos Masi, Madam Clerk. And at this time, Acting Majority Leader Senator Marsh Titano, I will recognize you.
Sainamaasi, Madam Speaker. I move to approve the Legislative Journal dated October 28, 2019, subject to corrections.
On the motion to approve the Legislative Journal dated October 28, 2019, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Acting Majority Leader Senator Marsh Titano, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, there are communications and petitions, and I move that they be appended to today's session journal.
Si Diyos Masi, Acting Majority Leader, on the motion that communications and petitions be appended to today's session journal, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Acting Majority Leader, you are still recognized.
Madam Speaker, there are messages from E. Magahagan Guahan, and I move that they be appended to today's session journal.
On that motion, that messages from the Imagahagan Guahan be appended to today's journal, are there any objections? No objections. Motion carries. Assistant Majority Leader Senator Marsh Titano, you are still recognized.
Madam Speaker, there are reports of standing committees, and I move that they be appended to today's session journal.
On the motion that reports of standing committees be appended to today's session journal, are there any objections? If there are no objections, motion carries. Acting Majority Leader Senator Marsh Titano, you're still recognized.
Madam Speaker, there are no reports of select committees.
Si Diyos Masi, Senator Marsh Titano, please proceed.
Madam Speaker, I move that bills introduced 224-35 COR through 226-35 COR, 228-35 LS through 230-35 LS and 231-35 COR through 241-35 COR, and resolutions introduced 239-35 COR, 240-35 LS through 249-35 LS and 250-35 COR through 252-35 COR be deemed to have been given their first reading.
On the motion, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. We are in motions right now. Acting Majority Leader Senator Marsh Titano, you are recognized at this time.
Madam Speaker, I move to excuse senators not present for today's legislative session.
On the motion, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Assistant Majority Leader Senator Marsh Titano, I will still recognize you. Please proceed.
Madam Speaker, I move that all congratulatory, commendatory, and condolence resolutions introduced today and for the remainder of this legislative session be considered for first read and adopted, to allow the Legislative Council to make technical corrections, and to add all senators as co-sponsors.
On the motion, are there any objections? Seeing none, motion carries. Senator Tello Tadegui on motions, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the House rules and a decision by members of the Committee on Rules this morning not to move on Bill 5, which prioritizes the planning efforts of the facility improvements of Guam Memorial Hospital, I move to add Bill 5 as amended on the Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing, and further amend on the floor during the October 2019 session held on October 30th, 2019 to the session agenda.
There has been a motion by Senator Tello Tadegui. Are there any objections? Senator San Augustine?
Madam Speaker, I technically don't have an objection to the bill, but on the last session, that was referred back to committee.
Has there been a report out from that committee?
That's
So
notwithstanding.
there is a notwithstanding provision on the floor. It is not debatable. Are there any objections? There's an objection? No objection? Motion carries. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, we are in legislative concurrence. Senator Tello Tadegui, we are still on motions before we
Yes.
go to concurrence.
Yes, still on motions, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, notwithstanding House rules and a decision made by the members of the Committee on Rules this morning not to move Bill 6, which seeks to repeal the law authorizing automatic retirement benefits for the governors and lieutenant governors prospectively. Not this current governor, ladies and gentlemen, but moving forward in the future. So I move that Bill 6, as amended by the Committee on Rules and General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing, to this session agenda.
There has been a motion. I'm going to take a moment's recess to make sure there's no copies on the floor right now. I'm going to take a moment's recess. Enmienda 35 na legislatura in Guahan is back from recess. There was a motion on the floor, notwithstanding the House rules, to put bill number 6-35. Is that COR or LS, Senator Titagui? Can you just please restate the motion if you may?
Madam Speaker, this is Bill number 6-35 LS, as amended on the Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing.
There is a motion on the floor to add bill number 6. There is an objection. All those in favor of putting number 6-35 LS on the agenda as amended, please signify by raising your hand. Motion fails. We are on motions, ladies and gentlemen. Are there any other motions? If not, we are in legislative concurrence. Legislative Secretary, can you do me a favor and move the concurrence from public accountability?
Sejus Masi, Madam Speaker, I move to place in the voting file from the Committee on Public Accountability, Human Resources, and the Guam Buildup the nomination of Anthony P. Beneventi to serve as a member of the Civil Service Commission with the recommendation to do confirm.
On that motion, are there any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Legislative Secretary Shelton, you are recognized.
Sejus Masi, Madam Speaker, I move to place in the voting file from the Committee on Public Accountability, Human Resources, and the Guam Buildup the nomination of John A. Smith to serve as a member of the Civil Service Commission with the recommendation to do confirm.
On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Sejus Masi, Senator Shelton. Senator Sabina Paris, you are recognized at this time.
Sejus Masi, Madam Speaker. I move to place in the voting file from the Committee on Environment, Revenue, and Taxation and Procurement the nomination of Roland C. Bisco to serve as a member, the insurance industry representative on the Guam Banking and Insurance Board with a recommendation to confirm.
On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Senator Paris, you're still recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to place in the voting file from the Committee on Environment, Revenue, and Taxation and Procurement the nomination of John McKinnon to serve as a member, banking industry representative of the Guam Banking and Insurance Board with a recommendation to confirm.
On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries.
Sejus Masi, Madam Speaker. I move to place in the voting file from the Committee on Environment, Revenue, and Taxation the nomination of Michael A. Scrow to serve as a member of the Guam Banking Insurance Board.
On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Senator Paris.
Sejus Masi, Madam Speaker. I move to place in the voting file from the Committee on Environment, Revenue, and Taxation and Procurement the nomination of Peter Valdez to serve as a member, a banking industry representative of the Guam Banking and Insurance Board
With a recommendation to do confirm.
with a recommendation to do confirm.
On that motion, without any objection, motion carries. Are there any? Senator Therese Terlahi, I will recognize you at this time.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to place in the voting file from the Committee on Health, Tourism, Historic Preservation, Land, and Justice the nomination of Joseph I. Cruz to serve as a member of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission with the recommendation to do confirm.
On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, we will now go into the second reading file, and on the agenda, Bill number 13-35 COR. Legislative Secretary Shelton, you are recognized. One moment, Legislative Secretary. Senator Talatadigui, I will recognize you.
Madam Speaker, considering these bills were just put on the agenda this morning, and now we're rushing right into session with these bills, it doesn't give us an opportunity to review these, gives us enough time to review these bills. So I ask that we recess until tomorrow to have the opportunity to look at the bills.
There's been an objection on the motion. There's been an objection. All those in favor to have a recess, please signify by raising your hand. Motion fails. Senator Shelton, you are recognized.
Situus Masi, Madam Speaker, and thank you very much. I'd like to move Bill number 13-35 as amended into the third reading file for discussion.
Senator, Legislative Secretary, for formality, I'm going to ask that you read the bill, if it's either COR or LS, as amended or introduced, the sponsorship, the title, and then move to the, I apologize. Just
No, of course. Thank you, Madam
you.
Speaker. It's Bill number 13-35 COR as amended, introduced by myself, Senator Therese M. Terlahi, Speaker Tina Rose Munoz Barnes, Senator Regine Bisco Lee, Senator Pito Terlahi, and Senator Talina Cruz Nelson, an act to add a new Chapter 32 to Title IX of the Guam Code annotated relative to protecting elderly adults from exploitation by providing criminal punishment for those who harm our Manamku and disabled people.
Madam
Into
Secretary.
the third reading
Yes.
file for discussion.
Madam Legislative Secretary, I want to ask for the record, you said as amended by the committee. Is it going to be as amended or as further substituted? We need a confirmation by the clerk. We will take a moment's recess. You mean the 35 na legislature in Guahan is back from recess. Legislative Secretary, I'm going to go ahead and recognize you for 2 motions.
Situus Masi, Madam Speaker. I move to place Bill number 13-35 COR, introduced by Amanda L. Shelton, Therese M. Terlahi, Tina Rose Munoz Barnes, Regine Biscoli, Jose Pito Terlahi, and Talina Cruz Nelson, as amended by the Committee on Higher Education and the Advancement of Women, Youth, and Senior Citizens, and substituted on the floor, an act to add a new Chapter 32 to Title 9 of the Guam Code Annotated relative to protecting elderly persons and disabled adults from financial exploitation by providing criminal punishment for those who harm our Manamku and individuals with disabilities.
So motion to accept. Motion to accept.
Move to accept this, yes.
First, on that motion, hearing no objections, motion carries.
And Madam,
I just want to tell my colleagues, all the copies were passed out. Senator San Augustine, you got it? Situus Masi. Legislative Secretary, I apologize. Please proceed.
Situus Masi, and I move to place Bill number 13-35 COR as accepted on the floor to the 3rd reading file for discussion.
Please proceed.
Situus Masi, Madam Speaker. First, I'd like to thank the Office of the Attorney General, who has worked with my office to make the necessary changes to this bill. We first heard this bill a couple of sessions ago with some concerns from colleagues and wanting feedback from the Attorney General's office. So we have reached out to them, worked together with them to make those necessary changes. And the main change is the removal of the sections regarding physical or sexual abuse, as those criminal statutes are already well defined and have existing sentence enhancements in the law, notably named as the Vulnerable Victims Act. So the Attorney General also suggested for changes in the criminal statutes for physical and sexual abuse, but as those sections were removed from this version of the bill, those suggestions will be tackled in subsequent legislation. Aside from the removal of the physical and sexual abuse sections of this bill and changes to form and style, the notable changes the committee incorporated at the recommendation of the Attorney General's office were: number 1, the definition of elder was changed from 60 years of age to 55 years of age to conform to the definition of elder with other places in the criminal code. This is in line with equal protection by having one definition of the age of elder throughout the criminal code. The second is the provision for the return of property of the victim would now be a separate section in the code. However, the language remains the same. Madam Speaker, elder financial exploitation is a very real problem on Guam. According to our local division of senior citizens at the Department of Public Health, financial exploitation of the elderly has increased 32% since 2015 and is the #1 most reported form of abuse of the elderly or individuals with disabilities on Guam. Still, according to the U.S. Department of Justice, only about 1 in 44 instances of elder financial exploitation is reported, so we can only imagine what the numbers really are. Financial exploitation of the elderly and disabled can cause large economic losses and cause greater reliance on Medicare, Medicaid, and MIP. According to the U.S. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, between 2013 and 2017, victims lost an average of $41,000 to elder financial exploitation. The National Center on Elder Abuse estimates that financial exploitation of the elderly costs our senior citizens $2.9 billion a year. This type of abuse includes scams, using an ATM card without the permission of that elderly person, forgery, identity theft, and coercing seniors and disabled individuals into giving up their assets. Several states already have specific laws against elder financial exploitation, such as California, Florida, Nevada, etc. And Bill 13-35 is modeled after these laws and would provide the legal protections our Manamku and individuals with disabilities deserve. Unfortunately, there are those out there who exploit these populations for their own gain. And Bill 13-35 would protect them through the 3 Ps addressed in this bill: prevention, protection, and prosecution. Prosecution encourages more victims of financial exploitation to come forward. One of the reasons elder abuse is underreported is that victims are afraid to act unless they're certain that they will have the support and laws to back their claim. This is according to the National Adult Protective Services Association. Elder abuse is vastly underreported. As I mentioned earlier, only 1 in 44 cases of financial abuse ever comes to light. Bill 13-35 provides the necessary backing of the law on the side of victims of financial exploitation. 2, it provides protection. It protects victims from losing money. Financial abuse by itself, as mentioned, is over $2.9 billion lost annually by our elders throughout the country. Bill 13-35 would protect victims from losing their money or property by providing a process by which a court may order funds, assets, or properties returned to the victim, which is found in Section 32.50 of the bill. And 3, prevention, as it will discourage current abusers. By promoting criminal punishment, this bill may dissuade current abusers and imminent abusers from financially exploiting our Manamku and people with disabilities. Some people don't think of financial exploitation as wrong or illegal, but it is. Studies show perpetrators are more likely to have history of past or current substance abuse, to have history of trouble with the police, to be unemployed, or have financial problems. Clearly defined laws against financial exploitation of the elderly and individuals with disabilities will dissuade this type of abuse. So, Madam Speaker, I look forward to the discussion, and I ask that my colleagues also give their input to help us strengthen this bill. And I thank them in advance for their support to protect our elderly individuals in our community. Sidious Masi, Madam Speaker.
You're very welcome, Legislative Secretary. Anyone else on the main motion? Senator Joseph Augustine, I will recognize you. Por favor, consigue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of this bill, and I'm really worried and concerned that I don't know what the numbers are here in Guam, but nationally there is abuse with the Manamku. And there's only a few of us in this body that's in that category. So we want to make sure that we don't become abused in the near future. Thank you.
Sidious Masi. Anyone else on the main motion? If not, Legislative Secretary. Senator Kelly Marsh Taitano, then Senator Lee. Senator, Acting Majority Leader, please proceed.
Sainamasi, Madam Speaker. In reading through this, on page 10, there are a couple of references to the term wasting, and so that seemed to me to be a general term, that's one that's subjective. And so I'd like to ask the author if she could provide a definition for wasting or get some sort of understanding as to how this would be interpreted. I too rise in support of the bill. We want to make sure that we're protecting our Manamko, and one of the things that has been left vulnerable is making sure that there's protection of financial and property assets, which this bill covers. So I really appreciate that, but I just want the question about the subjectivity of the term wasting, used twice on page 10, to be clarified if possible.
Sidious Masi, Acting Majority Leader. Legislative Secretary, would you like to yield?
Sidious Masi, Madam Speaker, I'd like to ask for a brief recess to draft an amendment to clarify the language.
Thank you. Moment's recess. We're going back in. 35th Guam Legislature is back from recess. When we last left, Senator Shelton, Legislative Secretary, you were yielding to Senator Marsh Teichner's inquiry. Please proceed.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The previous speaker was asking for a clarification, what the definition of the term wasting was in the bill. It read wasting, embezzling, or intentionally mismanaging the assets of the principal or beneficiary. And this wasting was referring to destroying the value of something or an asset. But I've been working with the previous speaker to offer an amendment, so she will be doing that.
Sijus Masi, Legislative Secretary. Senator Marsh Teichner, you're still recognized.
Sanamaasi, Madam Speaker. As the previous speaker and the author of this bill was mentioning, we've been working with legal quite a bit and going through quite a few definitions to come towards something that protects both the caretakers and the elderly or those with people with disabilities that might be applicable to this bill. So I'm offering an amendment with the author of this bill that will clean up some language and help clarify things overall. On line 7 through 17, page 10, to amend the bill to read, C, is a guardian a trustee who is an individual or an agent under a power of attorney who breaches a fiduciary duty to the elderly person or disabled adult, which results in an unauthorized appropriation, sale, or transfer of property. An unauthorized appropriation, sale, or transfer of property under this paragraph occurs when the elderly person or disabled adult does not receive the reasonably equivalent financial value in goods or services, or when the fiduciary violates any of these duties. And then it goes on to A, for appointed agents. I, committing fraud in obtaining their appointments. 2, abusing their powers. 3, crossing out wasting and having embezzling or intentionally mismanaging the assets of the principal or beneficiary, or 4, acting contrary to the principal's sole benefit or best interest, or B, for guardians and trustees. 1, I, committing fraud in obtaining their appointments. 2, abusing their powers. 3, again, crossing out wasting, embezzling, or intentionally mismanaging the assets of the principal or beneficiary, or. So that is our amendment in its entirety.
Thank you. On that amendment, anyone wishing to speak? Are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Senator Marsh Teichner, Assistant Majority Leader, you're still recognized. Senator Marsh Teichner, you still have the floor.
Sainama Asi. I had been working with the author of this bill previously, and I think we thought we had caught all of the references to peoples with disabilities. And I just noticed as I was reading this amendment that there are still some within the bill where it says disabled adult instead of adult with disabilities. So if I can just have, make the motion to have legal, make that correction so that it follows the title and the first page all throughout to make those legal, technical corrections all throughout.
On that motion, Are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, Senator Taitsino. Senator Lee, you're on the main motion. You are recognized. Senator Tello Taitigui, I will recognize you on the main motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, I attended the public hearing on Bill 13-35 and found a lot of interesting things and comments that were made, especially when it dealt with, family members. There was a big concern about that. And I'm glad the good author, working with the Attorney General's office, as she mentioned earlier, to take out certain things that was an issue for myself. I mean, the whole thing about this is not to discourage our own family members from watching our parents or our grandparents to become caregivers themselves. And I think we addressed some of those concerns. And I applaud the author for putting this bill through. I have a couple amendments, as I was talking with the author about just addressing the fact of when we were talking about family members, et cetera. And one of them was we discovered on page 2. And this is an amendment I'd like to proffer. So this is on page 2, line 19, and it reads, letter B, caregiver means a person who has been entrusted with, crossing out or, and incorporating and, has assumed responsibility for the care of the property of an elderly person or disabled adult. So what we're doing, we're making a significant change here. It's not a matter of just, hoping we can save a tree and just asking legal to cross out or and put and. We're actually changing this to incorporate someone else and not just a caregiver, but somebody who assumes responsibility. So we made this amendment, and I have another amendment to proceed the same type of change. So that's what this amendment will do.
Thank you, Senator Taitigui. On the amendment proffered by Senator Tello Taitigui, anyone wishing to speak? If not, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Senator Tello Taitigui, you're still recognized.
And again, Madam Speaker, as I mentioned earlier before, we're going to apply the same thing. And this is on page 4, line 25 to 27. And the amended bill reads, number 5. Sorry about that. Okay. My 90-year-old dad, who I'm watching too. No. Okay. Sorry about that. So it's number 5. Is any other person who has been entrusted with, crossing out or, and has assumed responsibility for the use or management of an elderly person or disabled adult's fund assets or property. And again, it just incorporates not just the caregiver, but as well as the anybody assuming the responsibility. And that's all this says.
Thank
this
you.
Amendment.
Thank you, Senator Taitigui. On Senator Tello Taitigui's amendment, anyone wishing to speak on the amendment? Senator Sabina Perez, you are recognized on her amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just a point of inquiry.
State your
Can
question, please.
the sponsor of the amendment clarify the page number and the line number again?
It's page 4.
Yeah, because I'm looking at the bill that was handed out. It seems to match page 5, line 1. Is that correct?
Page 4.
It's page 5. Page
Am I
5,
reading it
line
wrong?
1.
There could be some clarification
I
on that.
Senator Tello, page 5, line 1.
Okay,
On the
can I get
substitute.
one minute? I'm sorry, I was distracted for a minute. Find out what they're talking about.
A moment recess. Y mi 85 na legislature is back from recess. Again, on the Senator Tello Titagui amendment, thank you, Senator Sabina. We are looking at the version as amended, but further substituted on the floor. It's on page 5, line 1, where the amendment is.
Yes, Madam Chair, I was able to confer that, and if legal can just make that correction on the line without having to reprint this thing, because what the purpose of this is to, just cross out or and put and. So if
So noted.
So noted. Okay.
So
So
noted.
it
Thank
will
you.
be page 5 and line 1.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Titagui. On the amendment, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, Senator Titagui. On the main motion, anyone else wishing to speak? If not, Senator Therese Terlaye, on the main motion, on the bill. You are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of this bill and the incidents of abuse that the authors are trying to curb, and that the Bureau of Adult Protective Services at the Department of Public Health and Social Services has dedicated their careers and in many cases their lives to. It's so we need to finesse the work of the government in this area and the options that we have available for us. But I do want to recognize that we do have many options available to us now, thanks to the work of those ahead of us who are very proactive, and they, of course, pass an Adult Protective Services law into place. And in 2012, it was updated. I believe you were in the legislature at that time, Madam Speaker. And so they updated the law that allows for protective orders. And so this is how pretty much it was a special procedure to allow anyone who suspected that an adult, an elderly was being abused, or an adult with disabilities were being abused, that they could report this, and that we would have an objective third party to come in and assess the situation, and to do a lot more than that, to actually provide shelter when necessary, to provide support services, and to take care of these families that were struggling a lot of the time to take care of those elderly or those persons with disabilities. We also, the legislatures before us also enacted statutes that discussed, in particular, offenses against family members. And they also, put in a whole chapter in the code regarding protection from abuse and abuse of incompetence. And of course, we have our criminal law regarding property crimes and physical crimes, assault, and emotional harm that is caused to any of these persons also. We also have in the statutes a vulnerable victims statute for increased penalties for those who commit these types of crimes for vulnerable victims. But, and then we have the Department of Public Health, this Bureau of Adult Protective Services, that is dedicated to enforcement of these laws, and that they have, in fact, they issue a report regularly. So their report shows that they had, in 2018, 240 referrals or intakes of alleged abuse. And of the 240 allegations, they break them up by race of the client, and they break them up by types of crime. And they said out of the 240, 166 of those were Chamorros. And 87 of those referrals were for financial property. So they've seen this increase, so they show the statistics over the years and the increase in this crime of financial or property abuse. But the most perplexing indication in that report was that out of the 240, only 3 they found to be substantiated. So that means the rest were non-conclusive or they weren't able to substantiate it. And so there are several reasons for that. Sometimes they couldn't get the cooperation of the person who's alleged to have done the crime, and so then they have to refer it to GPD. And of course they refer physical crimes to the Attorney General's office, but I just feel like we need to definitely in future bills also focus on what is the impediment to the prosecution of these crimes. But they did say in their report, and so I think this is good news, right? I mean, because we hear bad news all the time, and this is a bad news that we're trying to solve here. But the good news is that we've got these services in place, we have stiff penalties in place, and we have people in place to actually focus on this. And we also have, they have a finding that says that most of the reported incidences were found non-conclusive or inconclusive, unsubstantiated, because they found them to be not intentional. And what they were finding was that the caregivers were stressed, and they were just not, they lacked knowledge to deal with these, their elderly parents and how to care for those with disabilities. And I know because my parents are elderly also, and we're probably, a lot of us are in this situation, and we are learning day by day, right, how to deal with their changing situation, their changing circumstances, changing illnesses. And so many times I feel incompetent myself how to deal with those. I try to find help when I can, experts that can tell me what to do. And so this is a serious issue for Guam. We have elderly population that we need to take care of. We need to equip ourselves, our whole population, in how to do this, and we need special facilities for these elderly people to be taken care of when there are no family members to do that. So, again, the good news is that the Bureau of Adult Protective Services can provide information and support systems for caretakers. And that's what they do. When they get called out on crisis intervention, they go out there and they do a social work approach, and they help these families. And they also have a shelter. And so this is a great benefit that they are able to, when they need to, remove these elderly and place them in a shelter for their protection. So they run a 24/7 Guma Serenidad Crisis Intervention Hotline, and if you would indulge me, Madam Speaker, I'm going to read the number. It's 632-8853. This is a 24/7 crisis intervention. If you suspect an elderly is being abused, call the number, and you are immune from prosecution if you are reporting something in good faith. So please call and report. And the other thing that we have that I'm very proud and happy about is that the nursing the School of Nursing, under the leadership of Dr. Margaret Hattori Uchima, has succeeded in getting a grant that is $750,000 a year for 5 years, specifically for geriatric workforce enhancement. And she saw the need in the community from dealing, on the front lines with people, families who were really struggling with how to deal with elderly, how to care for them properly. And we want to care for them properly, and we just need to be equipped in that regard. So this grant is going to help them to train us, to train all of us. And so I'm so excited about that, and while we work on all the other solutions. So of course I want to commend the Bureau of Adult Protective Services, our public guardian, who is very, very active in these cases. She's another one of another, I think, success story of prior legislatures to have created that position. It's the only one sometimes in our government who can do these, kind of unique things, to go out there and help this one adult find a guardian for that person when there's no one else. Those are, the cases when there is no one else, and to protect them from abuse. And so, of course, St. Dominic's and Guam Memorial Hospital are also caring in very unusual circumstances sometimes for elderly who have no families caring for them. And again, to commend the University of Guam School of Nursing for their leadership and obtaining a grant to help us all in this area. And I know we have a lot of work to do, but I want to commend the primary sponsor and my colleagues for their support of this bill. Sidus Masi, Madam Speaker.
Sidus Masi, Senator Therese Chua. Anyone else on the main motion? If not, Senator Regine Biscoli, you're recognized.
Sidus Masi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise in support of Bill 13-35 COR, and I'm really thankful the author, my good friend from ASEN, graciously allowed me to come on as a co-sponsor for this measure. I also want to thank the Office of the Attorney General for working with us, for providing valuable input and feedback to this bill to strengthen this measure. God bless you. Madam Speaker, I think it's important also to admit very hard truths. When you're reading through this bill as substituted and we're thinking about what this entails, it really comes in conflict with the image that we have in our minds of our island paradise, and the one that we portray to the world and the one that we talk to ourselves about. I believe, Madam Speaker, that Guam's melting pot of cultures has a very important shared value, and that is respect for our elderly. But as Bill 13's author said just a little while ago, the financial exploitation of our island's elderly has become a growing problem. And as previous speakers have alluded to, just listening to elders in my family, listening to our Manumku, our family, our friends, our mentors, in discussions with them and visits that we've had to our senior centers. My grandmother's sisters are up at the Dedado Senior Center, so I have an opportunity to go visit them and a bunch of their friends up there. You hear these stories from them. Many of them are victims of cyber scams or online phishing, where they are sent these emails or even text messages that force them or request information from them, and they follow along and comply and find themselves in a lot of trouble. But what's the most heartbreaking for me, Madam Speaker, is when you hear these stories about our Manumku that are victimized by members of their own family and by people that they know. And I'm proud to co-sponsor this measure because I think it's time that we send a very clear message to those who victimize the most vulnerable on our island. I think it's important that we stand for the grandparents whose children's children, who trust their children's children without question. It's time that we stand for the retiree who needs a helper to take care of their bills and get their affairs in order. Madam Speaker, it's important that we stand for Amanumku and the adults with disabilities in our community who rely on others each and every single day. Most in this position of trust will take this responsibility seriously with the respect and love that our mañana deserve. But for those who think that someone old is an easy target, for those who think that the law will not take this despicable crime seriously, let's echo the generations of Manamku in these halls when we say, Binetsu za timamagu si Zeus. Thank you.
Si Zeus Masi, Senator Lee. Anyone else on the main motion? If not, Assistant Majority Leader Marsh, can you please come and take the podium?
Speaker Munya Barnes, you are recognized.
Si Zeus Masi, Madam Speaker, and Madam Speaker, I rise in support of Bill number 13-35 COR, and I literally would like to take the time to thank the good author, our legislative secretary, for giving me an opportunity with my colleagues to be a part of this co-sponsorship. And I want to say that I literally want to commend the author of this bill for bringing light on this very, very important and very real issue that we have on our island, which affects our island's greatest generation that has ever lived, our Manamko. Elder bills, also known as Manamko bills, comes in many different forms. These are emotional, psychological, abandonment, and neglect. But the two most common forms are physical abuse and financial abuse. And it was just this past Saturday when I heard of a grandson taking his grandmother's tax refund and using it to his own personal gain. And we barely hear about it, but this situation is unfortunately very common on our island. Many times our parents feel pressured to keep the peace within the family, and this could mean giving away their COLA, retirement check, or even giving up on their food stamps. There are people who accompany them to the bank and pressure them and say you have to pull out loans, money, or even credit cards under their names. And in addition to financial abuse, relatives may take and use their sinus prescription medicine for their own personal use or to sell, leaving our elders to suffer through illness and diseases. And I want to say, Madam Speaker, that our Manamko are already under enough pressure as it is with the cost of living going up while their pension is still set on a fixed rate. Our Manamko have survived through wars, natural disasters, and everyday trauma. And I want to share with you, Madam Speaker, let's give them the peace of mind that they deserve, knowing that their assets are in good hands. And when this bill came to us to see if we would support it, and I saw it. I said, oh my God, Senator, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be a part of this. Because though we don't want to admit it, it sometimes happens in our own backyards. And until we enforce teeth, and until we literally take the stand and say as policymakers, enough is enough, we cannot hurt even the ones we love. This is one of those ways, and I want to thank the retiring speaker from Jonia who brought up all the work that has been done from the Guardian, the Attorney General's office, and even the number to where our manumcles can go through or to even call, because it is really important. Sometimes they say, you know, never mind. I don't want to get my grandson or my child in trouble. Just never mind. But even knowing that there is a place where they could go to would probably even ease their mind. And knowing that this bill is going to be in place, you know, sometimes you really say that you don't have to legislate common sense, but sometimes you need it. Because we have to tell our sinus, we have to tell our manamco that we do care and that we do understand. And if there's any exploitation or abuse going on, especially as it relates to financial matters, we want to take a stand and saying we do care, and we're going to make sure that those who violate it have to suffer the consequences. So, Madam Speaker, I want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to rise in support of this. I thank the good author from Aston for giving me the opportunity to speak on this bill, but more importantly, to ask all my colleagues, let's have a unanimous vote on this bill. Si Diyos masi.
On the motion, is there anyone else? If not, Senator Shelton, would you like to close?
Si Diyos masi, Madam Speaker. Before closing, I'd like to offer two amendments quickly. The first one is on page 20 beginning on page 20 of page 2. And this is to delete the definition of deception during the amendments to the bill and then the substitute version of the bill. This definition was found not to be needed anymore, so I'd like to delete that.
So I just want to make sure that it's to delete the word.
Beginning from letter C, deception means
Deception means all the way down to 5, right?
number 5, yes,
On
the
that
definition.
motion, on that amendment, are there any objections? Anyone wishing to speak? No objections? Motion carries. Legislative Secretary, you still have the floor.
Thank you. And the second amendment is line 23 to 27 on page 3, and this is to delete the definition of facility. Again, in the substitute version of the bill, we are no longer in need of this definition.
Thank you, Legislative Secretary. On that amendment, are there any objections? Hearing none. Motion carries.
Si Diyos masi, Madam Speaker, and I'd like to thank you and all of our colleagues today who have got up to speak in support of this bill, in support of our manamku and the protection of our manamku. And as one of our colleagues mentioned earlier, that this is something that we don't want to face, and we shouldn't have to face, a very sad subject, but it is the reality right now, and it's a reality that we must prepare for and we must address. And so being from a culture of respect, having an island value of respect and caring for others, I think that this is a bill that will help us to carry out that tradition, especially to help us take care of one another and take care of our manamku. So I want to, again, reiterate that we don't want to make things harder for family members or friends who...
I apologize. Senator Shelton, you still have the floor.
Family members or friends who
We're going to take a moment's recess. Emilio 35 na legislature in Guahan is back from recess. I'm going to ask my colleagues to please, there was an interruption, and I'm asking that we provide proper decorum when a colleague is speak on the floor. And I'm going to note for the record that Senator Shelton had the floor on closing, Legislative Secretary. I apologize for that. I will note for the record we must give respect to our colleagues while they're speaking, and I will go ahead and allow you, Madam Speaker. My apologies. Please proceed.
Okay, Situus Masi, Madam Speaker. Again, I was thanking our colleagues for rising in support of this measure and sharing how this is something that as a people we don't want to face, but we must prepare for so that we can continue to be better as a community, to treat our elders in the best way possible. Something that I think is so beautiful in our culture, in our island community, is that many of us have the privilege to take care of our elders, whether it be a parent, a grandparent, an aunt, or an uncle. In their twilight years, in their golden years, we have the opportunity to care for them, whether it be their health needs or their financial needs. Sometimes we are fortunate enough to serve them in that way, to have that kind of blessing that they can share their wisdom and that we can share in service. And so we'd like to carry on that tradition of serving our elders who paved the way for us, who built this island to what it is today, who we have so much to owe. We owe so much to them, a debt of gratitude. And I'd like to thank everyone who helped us in drafting this legislation, the Division of Senior Citizens, DICID, the Office of the Attorney General, all of our colleagues and the committee, and also thank our colleagues here, and I'd like to move to add some of them as co-sponsors, Senator Joe San Augustine, Senator Tello Taitagui, and Senator Kelly Marsh Taitino as co-sponsors of this legislation.
On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Legislative Secretary, you're still got the floor.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. And so with that, again, I'd just like to thank all of our colleagues, and I'd like to also thank some other individuals who during the month of Senior Citizens Recognition in May put out some really great information for our senior citizens who are looking for assistance with anything related to the law, and that was the Public Defender's Office who came and gave a workshop here, and they continue to do that kind of help. And so if anyone is in need of assistance, they can reach out to our committee, the Advancement of Senior Citizens, and we'd be happy to connect them in that way. So just Masi.
On the motion, Legislative Secretary.
Thank you very much. I move that Bill 13-35 as amended and then as substituted on the floor be moved to the third reading file for voting.
On that motion, without any objection, Motion carries. Assistant Majority Leader on the motion to recess to tomorrow at 9.
Senator Maasi, Madam Speaker. I motion that we recess until 9 a.m. tomorrow.
On that motion, without an objection, we are in recess. Sana Maasi, have a good evening, colleagues.